What's up, guys? It's Reynad back from the new place with a long overdue update video for the Bazaar. So, sorry it's taken a while to get this one out. I was moving, I was traveling, I was in Europe for about a month, partly with the developers of the Bazaar in Ukraine, partly in Romania for about a week for an event. You know, now that I'm back, I look forward to cranking these videos out in a more timely way for you guys. It's been a while since the last update, so this one's going to be pretty big, and I'm going to kind of combine the art side of things with the design side of things and talk about all those together. So, first of all, the art side of things. Where we left off was we settled on what the wizard would look like, more or less, like the initial sketches for him. I was having trouble finding a vampire that I felt like was a good fit for the character. I did get some more drafts for the vampire. This one is more in the style similar to that one of the first ones we looked at. These are just different examples of expressions, angles, hairstyles, just to help provide an idea of, you know, what direction do we want to go in. And again, some of these look good. I think they're all interesting. The main issue I was having with Vampire wasn't really the artwork even. It was two things. Sure, none of the art really spoke to me as like, this is the vampire, but I think any of these would have been passable. The main issue was that I didn't like the gameplay of the class. It used its health as a resource, which sounds like an interesting mechanic, but then in practice, it made it feel like you got punished just for playing the game, and it wasn't a particularly fun mechanic. On top of that, the vampire was thematically kind of a problem because it was the only class in the game where the themes around the character were kind of not family friendly. A lot of it was blood, killing things, ritual sacrifice, things like that. And it kind of stood out as this character that kind of stopped the game from being family friendly. Just because it existed. So basically because, I didn't like the card design, and I had to redesign the class from the bottom up. And on top of that, I also thought the theme was always going to be a challenge. I basically asked myself, does it make sense to have this be a vampire at all? And I talked with the Ukrainians about this a little bit, and basically we decided, let's go ahead and take this vampire idea and see what other options there are for it. So one of the first things they suggested was, maybe rather than being like a Western vampire, maybe it's like the Chinese style of vampire. Apparently, there are these creatures that hop around and have giant hands, and they like drain the soul out of their prey. So it's not as gory. So thematically, that solved the problem. So we had some drafts, kind of in a different style. This one is more Middle Eastern. This one is still more blood related. I don't think we actually ever got drafts of the one that hopped around. Long story short, I thought, since we're going to push the vampire mechanic more towards nocturnal, more towards using that new day and night cycle that we implemented, which I talked about in the last design video. Since we're going that direction anyway, should it even be a vampire, basically, is what I asked. And basically what we went ahead and decided on is, let's try a werewolf instead, or something that's more thematically going to fit the nocturnal cycles that we have, something that's going to be less of a challenge like thematically. And we're kind of going in that direction right now, seeing if we can find a character that we're a fan of when it comes to werewolves. These are the first few drafts for werewolf. Do you guys remember those really hard Valentine's Day candies with like little cute things written on them that taste like sand? Yeah. This one I really liked, never skip arm day, friendly reminder. I like the flavor here. It seemed like, it's an interesting character. It's atypical for a female character. I thought the wolf part of it looked pretty cool. Just overall, I like this direction. Maybe we make the hair curlier or something on the wolf side of it. Now, here's another draft right here. So personally, I like the second one the most. So we're going to kind of roll with this. And, I want to mention that one of the things I felt like we need to solve in the game is finding like a good world builder and character creator, because the process shouldn't just be like the artist giving sketches and then me saying yes or no, because creating characters is not my core competency, right? It's not my specialty. So I don't think I should be doing it. So what we're doing now is basically getting a couple initial drafts so that we have 2 sketches for 2 classes that we can kind of work with for the initial vertical slice. And then in the meantime, what I'm doing is screening a lot of different world builders and writers, people that specialize in this kind of thing. And we're even talking to companies we could partner with to help create the IP for the game. So we're definitely exploring options for that, but it's not like for the entire process it's going to be me saying yes or no to sketches. this is just kind of what we're doing in the early stages so that we have some art to work with. Yeah, in the long run, we'll definitely get some people that really specialize in building out like a robust world and lore and characters. So the whole process won't be like this. Anyway, we're going to roll with this werewolf. Outside of the werewolf, I wasn't exactly sure if the werewolf should be the second class. For those guys that don't know where we're at in the process right now, basically what we're focusing on right now is building out a vertical slice. And what a vertical slice is it's basically a very polished, finalized version of the game, essentially, that only showcases one thin part of it, like one specific matchup with two heroes. So what we're doing right now is focusing on just building that out. So it'll have animations, it'll have a fully polished board, it'll be shiny, but it'll only be playable, one game mode with two heroes. That's it, just that one match. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. So basically, one of those heroes is definitely going to be the wizard, and right now we need to figure out is what is the second class going to be. Is it going to be this werewolf that we build from scratch? Maybe. What I suggested was we either do werewolf or merchant or engineer, and I have sketches for merchant and engineer to show you guys. So for the first draft of the engineer and merchant, the artist just took a stab at some character designs without any direction. Here's an example of the engineer. Here's a female one. And then the merchant, we have one here. It's very aristocratic, I guess would be the word. We have a female version. So, some options. So my feedback on the engineer was I wanted a non-human engineer. That's something that I thought would be pretty cool to have in the game because, it is an intergalactic marketplace. It's not just going to be like medieval themed place on Earth with all humans as the characters. I really wanted a broad range of characters and styles. So what I imagined for the engineer was always like a Wall-E type of character, like a small little robot that builds stuff. And that's the feedback I gave on the engineer side of things. On the merchant side of things, I thought back to the art that the last team did, the American team, and I really liked their merchant art, or at least like the flavor and the character of it, which was this one. And, it's a little bit cartoony, but I like the idea behind the character. He's a scuffed merchant, not the best. He's a little bit older, but, he's like a likable character, very happy. I think that direction made sense for a merchant. I figured, let's roll with it. And I basically gave them this art as kind of the direction for future sketches. So after that feedback, we got sketches a few days later. Actually, this was before I gave them the robot feedback. This was more examples of engineers that are humanoid. And I like a lot of these. I think they're pretty interesting characters. It's a great artist, great at just winging a bunch of characters, just improvising. This is an example of a merchant again, another merchant. Pig merchant, which is kind of a cool idea. I don't know, I like this one a lot. We're going to definitely have a lot of non-human characters in the game as time goes on. This one really likes snacks. What is this even? Like a koi? I don't even know what creature that is, but I like it. This one's pretty cool. Anyway, more takes on these classes. Great sketches. Could definitely roll with some of those. If you guys think any of those might be better than the merchant that I showed earlier, the colorized one, let us know. Because, maybe you guys really like the direction of one of these more. Like I said, I'm open to suggestions. This is not my core competency right now. We're just looking to have something to work with in the near future. So after giving the feedback on the robot and the merchant, I got some more merchant suggestions. They're all doing this little holdy thing with their robe now. This one's got a little table in front of him. I really like this equipment that he has, but I thought the face here was too young. I just really wasn't feeling this. I thought this one was too young too. So decent draft, but we'll kind of keep rolling with it. See where it ends up. I really liked the robot sketches the artist did. I think all three of them turned out great. I think this one's awesome. It's the one I like the least of the three, but it's still, I would definitely be fine with a robot like this. It's exactly what I had in mind. It's really impressive how with so little direction, the artist did so much with these. I love the flavor of this one. It looks really familiar, like it's from something, but I can't put my finger on it. But yeah, happy little robot dude. He builds things clearly. He's got a little thumbs up going on. I really like this one. And then we got this one over here, which it's maybe my favorite. It's definitely one of these two. Yeah, so I really like the art direction on these. I think we'll just pick one of these and roll with it for now, just have a placeholder. And, after we bring on the world builder and the character designer, see if they like this direction and if we need to change anything up. Ideally, most designs with anything creative are very iterative. Usually, you go through lots of iterations, improving it a little bit every time as you go along. Personally, I'm a little concerned that I really like the first draft of these, and I'm just like, yeah, let's just roll with it. If the end product's good, it's all good. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of where we're at with the sketching process, mostly focused on the heroes and all of that. A lot of new card sketches, dozens and dozens of them, mostly Wizard, because we know for sure that the Wizard's going to be in the vertical slice. But the art's coming along really well. It's moving along in a good direction. So we did go ahead and implement the day and night cycle that I talked about in the last video and the new attacks system. And I'm very happy to say that the day-night cycle and the attack system both played really well. The game felt 100 times better with those implemented, which is awesome. So the day-night cycle, we only had the day and night cycle affect the store cards and not the neutral monsters. So it only affected these 6 cards in the middle when the night changed to a new day. And then these neutral monsters would stay the same. And what we realized was if these neutral monsters end up having like undesirable rewards, they just kind of stay there the entire game. So one of the things we're going to change in the next build is have all 8 cards rotate with the day-night cycle. It'll make the timing a little bit harder on big monsters if you're trying to kill them over 2 turns. But we found that it's like almost never the right play to try to do that with neutral monsters just because, you know, if you kill half of it, the chance that the other player finishes it off is very high. Anyway, aside from that, the attack system's been just feeling great. It's definitely a big upgrade over the system we had before. And, you know, now that we had all these big high-level mechanics in there, not the least of which is the turn-based spawning, that might actually be the biggest one, which, by the way, turn-based spawning has felt awesome as well. At least to me. You really have to get the turn spawns perfectly right, as in, for every card in the game, you need to identify the earliest and the latest turn that it should be showing up in the store. And you need to get those numbers absolutely right, because if you get those numbers wrong, that card feels so bad to play with when it shows up at a point of the game that it shouldn't show up. But when the pool of cards, when the turn spawns on them are all programmed optimally, it's felt really good to play with. So I really, really like that system. So those are like the 3 big things that I talked about in the last design video, right? Turn-based spawning, attacks, day-night cycle. They've all felt great. So what we tried doing is incorporating some synergy mechanics, because right now, you know, the engine was still lacking a lot of mechanics that we need for specific cards in the game. So I said, look, you know, rather than just picking the best card of the 3 at face value, let's try to, you know, shove some archetypes in the game pretty aggressively. Let's try to build some synergies between cards. So what I did is I suggested this mechanic called combo, which is pretty much the same mechanic as the one that exists in a lot of other deck building games, which is basically like you give each card a subtype, or in those games you give it a faction, and then if you've played another card with the same subtype in that turn, then the card gets a bonus. So we had like, you know, a fire staff that did 5 damage, but it did 8 damage instead if you played another fire card before the fire staff. So we played with this combo mechanic a lot, and a lot of cards obviously had multiple subtypes, so there were like, you know, Wizard had 4. It was Fire, Ice, Storm, and Alchemy. Those were the 4 archetypes, and a lot of the cards had, you know, 2 or 3 of the 4 subtypes on them. And it was interesting. It felt like a real game. It was fun to play with, but I you know, personally, I did not like how the optimal strategy became just keep picking cards of the same archetype. Because if combo is the main synergy mechanic in the game, what it does is it makes a card strictly more powerful if you played another card with the same subtype. So if you had like 2 fire cards that you got early, the best strategy just became buy every fire card that you see. And I felt like that really took away a lot of the decision making from, you know, crafting a deck and picking cards from the middle to build onto your deck. So personally, I feel like having those archetypes just shown at face value kind of just took away from a lot of the decision making the players did. So the challenge at this point became, how do we introduce synergies into these card pools in a way where it's not immediately obvious to the player that cards work together? How do we create these cards that can have synergy with one another, but the optimal strategy isn't just buy the synergy cards in the same like synergy archetype? Basically what we realized we needed is way more mechanics, and right now that's kind of the point of the design process that we're at. The game is going to need to be able to check whether a specific card has been played this turn. Like for example, if I have like an unpowered robot in the engineer class, I need to check if a battery was played this turn. If I want a weapon to give a bonus if you've played like 3 frost cards this turn or 3 potions this turn, you know, that's something that the engine can't do yet. It's one of the things we're programming in. So that's kind of the phase we're at right now. I think a really common type of effect will be checking whether a specific card is in your opponent's deck. So for example, rather than having the Fire Staff just give you a bonus if you've played another Fire subtype card, maybe the Fire Staff gives you a bonus if your opponent has a burn in their deck. One of the designers that we have working with us on a trial basis, he's been doing really well, he suggested, what if you showed debuffs? Like, what if cards gave debuffs? So basically, what if you played a weapon and it burned your opponent, and then there's like a burn icon on the portrait, and if an opponent's burned, then they take 1 damage every turn or something like that. And for me, I think that would give us a lot of design space, but my feedback was basically like, I really want to be careful with feature creep. I don't just want to keep adding like small features to the game if we can avoid it. But I like the idea of, giving a card a bonus if you've debuffed your opponent in some way. So I think the compromise would be, let's have the system we have now where you put a burn card in your opponent's deck, a card that auto plays itself when it's drawn, cycles, deals 1 damage to the opponent. Let's just put the burn card in his deck like we're doing now. But then if the opponent has a burn card in his deck, he's considered to be burning, and basically Fire Staff, for example, an item would say, if your opponent is burning, get a bonus. And burning is defined as, having a burn in their deck. And again, you can make the portrait light up on fire if there's one in there. But the damage itself only gets done when the card is drawn. So really, it's just visually representing the curses that you've put in your opponent's deck. We could do the same thing with frosts or stuns or, whatever it is. I think that's kind of the right direction to go, and that's where we'll try taking it. But designing synergies that are more subtle is really the challenge right now, and it's so much easier said than done. If you guys have suggestions on how to do this, I would love to hear them. So let me go ahead and show you kind of what the design has looked like on my side so far. What I started by doing is I basically created a chart like this for every single archetype within Wizard. The row number represents the turns that it spawns, +1. So basically Pyromancer's Coin, since it's on rows 1 through 10, it means it can spawn between turns 0 and 9. Green cards are items, so they're the cards that are constantly redrawn. The red cards are the monsters that get killed by attack, and then the blue cards were spells, so they had the one-time effect. They're bought with money. And I basically did this for, the fire archetype, the alchemy archetype. I did this for ice, for storm. I did unaligned cards as well. There's just so many questions that are going to take a lot of games to really find the answer to. For example, what percentage of cards in a class should have the subtype, right? Because in traditional deck building games, in a lot of them, 100% of the cards in the game have a faction. So you're encouraged to keep buying more and more cards of the same faction, which is fine. It's not a bad system. That's how our build plays right now, actually, and it's already felt excellent. It's felt like a big step up from traditional deck building games. It already feels like an improvement. I just feel like we can do so much better than that. But, maybe instead of 100% of the cards having a subtype, maybe it should be like 10% of the cards in a class have a subtype. The range is massive, right? The right answer can be 100, it could be 10. It's going to take a lot of games to figure out how much we want to use that subtype mechanic and what kind of cards we want that to apply to. There's so many cards that we have to design. I want to have 800 of them designed, tested, balanced before the game launches. I want about 100 cards per class. And if we're launching with 5 classes in the game, I want to have 8 of them already finished. So we have some lead time to design new heroes and constantly be releasing them. So right now, the scope of it is really starting to dawn on me. And it's definitely a scary thing. Designing cards, it's a creative process, and it's hard to identify the people that would be good hires for something like that. At the same time, it's not really something that's easy to delegate. Also, it's not necessarily sped up by putting more people on the project. You know what I mean? Like, if we have like 4 designers and we up it to 8 designers, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll get finished twice as fast. It might get finished even slower. Hiring people for creative work is a very challenging thing. Yeah, hiring people for hard skills is much easier. Soft skills is, I don't know, it's tough. Anyway, with that said, I think one thing that I would really like to make happen is involve the community. I think one of the things that has often been overlooked in traditional card games is the custom card creation community. I come from the paper card game world and Hearthstone, and in both of those games there's a huge community of players that loved creating custom cards for their game. And where companies like Valve, for example, have used those communities for games like Counter-Strike where the players made the skins, most companies haven't really taken advantage of their fan bases like that in a way that helps them create content. So long story short, what I'm thinking is it might be best to develop a tool for you guys to make custom cards and vote on them. Explain like at a high level how cards should be designed, and then just release the tool out in the wild and then use the community to help generate ideas at the very least. That's kind of where we're at in the process right now. We're just kind of like really thinking long and hard about what is the right way to go about designing all of these classes in a way where they have multiple play styles, can interact with the opponent, where the synergies aren't immediately obvious. Like the goal really is to just make a game where you're playing differently every single game that you queue up. So, rather than like a traditional card game where you pick your deck and then you hope that deck plays the exact same way every time so you win. The idea with this game is, look, you hop into a marketplace, these cards are showing up, and you have to create a strategy out of these cards that are showing up that's different from the strategy you played last game. We want that to be a fun experience. We want it to be different every time. And if we design the cards in the wrong way, then all of a sudden the best strategy could just become like, well, hey, here's a tier list of cards for every class. Let's just draft from the tier list, just take the best card of the three and ignore synergy. Or, for example, if we do the faction-based thing that I just tried, then you just keep picking cards of the same faction. There's a lot of ways for a card game to end up being unfun, and very few ways for it to actually be fun, because it's a very complex system with checks and balances that you have to build in order to make the play style more dynamic. So that's where we're at right now. I'm trying to do my best to make that a reality, and the scale of the project is a little daunting right now, but it's still moving forward. The next steps are going to be to set up weekly playtest sessions just internally, so that we just have a lot of games and a lot of data, a lot of feedback from people on these classes that we're designing, figuring out more what mechanics are fun and which ones aren't, which we are making progress on. There's a lot of types of mechanics that used to be in the game that are just removed now, and there's types of mechanics that were just experimental that we really want to expand upon because we found that they're more and more fun. So it's just a matter of time, essentially. It's just a matter of time and repetition. We need to go through these games a lot and just get a little bit better at identifying, what kinds of things in the game are fun and what kinds of things aren't fun, and, expand upon the ones that are. The final thing that I want to talk about from a design standpoint, and this is a bigger one, I want to talk about the economy system. Because, when I decided I want to make a digital deck building game, I basically wanted to, what Hearthstone was to Magic the Gathering, I wanted the Bazaar to be for, Dominion and Ascension and Star Realms and all these games. I wanted to make a digital first game for that huge audience of deck building game fans. So even though the game feels better than other deck building games right now, I still want to look at the core mechanics in those games that we're using and see if that really is the best way to go about it. So one of the core ways our game works right now is very similar to traditional deck building games. You draw 5 cards per turn. You discard any of the cards that you didn't play at the end of your turn. So there's really no holding on to cards. And, a lot of the cards in your deck give you this resource or make money for you that you spend to acquire more cards. So right now we have our 10 copper coins that start in the deck. And, you draw 5 of them, and you play them one by one, and you get 5 money. Very tedious process to play them one by one. And then you buy cards, and you shuffle your coins back in, draw more. So one thing we realized is, okay, playing these coins is tedious. But we can solve that in a lot of different ways. Maybe you can highlight multiple coins at once and throw them all into play together. Maybe there's a button that just says play all. Maybe when you hover over a card in the store, it highlights the coins in your hand that it would take to buy it. And then when you double click the card in the store, you just play and spend the coins automatically. We thought about all these systems to make the coins less tedious. But at the end of the day, one problem that the coins have is they're just not that fun. Playing a coin to increment how much money you have that turn by 1 is just not that exciting of an effect. And, it got us to thinking, should we even use that system the way that traditional deck building games use? Should we need to play cards to get money? So I thought about, okay, well, what other alternatives do we have? Some people on the team suggested, let's create some sort of bank that you can impact, that the bank gives you money every turn. Let's think about what if it's kind of a system like Hearthstone, where you start with, let's say, 3 coins on turn 1, and then turn 2 you're given 4 coins, turn 5 you're given 5 coins, or turn 3 you're given 5 coins. So basically you're given a set amount of money every turn to use that just happens automatically. And this is a lot of benefits, right? You would just remove all the coins from the starting deck, and the cards in the deck would actually be a lot more exciting to play with. So this is something we're considering as well. Outside of that, one option that I'm kind of considering is, what if we use a system that's closer to, let's say, like auto chess, where let's say you get 2 money per turn, and if you don't use some of your money, you save it. It just stays in your pool. That kind of eliminates the feel bad aspect of not being able to perfectly use your coins every turn. Let's say you have like 5 coins and all the cards on the board cost 2 or 4. You're going to end up with some money unspent, and that feels kind of bad. And the idea of saving coins has a lot of benefits too, because then you can save up for like a more expensive card. Well, long story short, we're considering all these things right now. We're going to try some different systems and just see what really feels the best. Maybe we just leave it and we have the coins remain in the starting deck. I don't know. This is really something that's up in the air, and really I don't know if I should have even brought it up in this video, because normally when I present stuff to you guys, I want to say like, hey, here's the problem, and then here's how we solved it. But, the truth is, like, here's the problem, and then we're in the process of solving it. I don't have the right answer yet. We're just going to try a few things. One of the issues we noticed with the coin system is that as you add cards to your deck, like you add weapons to your deck, the later in the game that it gets, the less money that you have to work with. So it'll be like turn 10, and you'll draw like 3 weapons and 2 copper. You only have 2 money. So the buying process kind of ceases to matter. One thing we did to compensate for that is we added a bounty to every monster. So if you kill a monster, it gives you some money for that turn. And that system has felt very good. And I think we would actually keep the bounty system even if we remove the coins from the game, just to kind of encourage people to be killing the monsters. It also makes the expensive cards actually buyable in the late game, which is a very big deal. Long story short, I know this has been a very rambly, like unstructured video, but I kind of wanted to explain to you guys where we're at, how I'm thinking about this stuff, and some of the problems we're trying to solve right now. Yeah, if you guys have ideas for just cool synergistic mechanics, feel free to throw them in the comments. A lot of times that people give game design suggestions, they're suggesting like, hey, program this new like 3rd mana resource and alternative win condition, and like they're always like adding complexity and then mechanics that aren't in the game yet, which sounds creative, but at the end of the day it's just gonna make me not implement the idea, because I'm really worried about feature creep, and I just want to make sure that the game stays simple at its core. So if you guys have ideas that fall within the existing mechanics of like putting cards in your deck, your opponent's deck, spells, items, putting stuff on stores, I'd love to hear them, because I just love ideas right now. And so many of you guys comment every time I post one of these videos, and the comments are super constructive. You guys put a lot of time into them. I do appreciate it. If you've ever commented on one of these YouTube videos, even if I didn't respond, I can basically guarantee you I read it. So I'm going to keep reading those, and I have gotten a lot of good ideas from YouTube comments and Reddit comments already, so I'm going to keep those going. I'm going to hope you guys keep them coming. I'll keep reading them for sure. If you're not already following the Play the Bazaar subreddit, please do that. A lot of the discussion that happens on there is very good. I try to respond, to most posts. Yeah, just thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the ideas. Hopefully by the time I do the update video for April, I'll have solutions for you guys for some of these problems that I presented. Yeah, I'm thinking I will. So anyway, thanks for watching. Sorry that this one was a little bit rambly and less like, here's a problem, here's a solution, boom, boom, boom. I think a lot of these update videos are going to kind of be more freeform like this moving forward. Yeah, so hopefully it's watchable for you guys despite that. Anyway, I do appreciate you watching. Give me some suggestions. Love to hear them. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.